Welcome to Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. Join Toby Malone and TJ Young, along with some special friends, as we puzzle our way through what we once thought was an unreadable book to produce a surprisingly listenable podcast. It is Thursday, June 20th, 2024. It has been 34 days since we have started reading, with 90 pages complete of 628, meaning we have 538 pages left to go and are 14.33% of the way through Finnegans Wake. Welcome to episode 8 of Wake, the podcast which tips us ever so slightly into madness with every passing page, but which uncovers far more than we expected to find as we fulfill a long-held bucket list item, reading James Joyce's Finnegans Wake out loud just once. I am your host, Toby Malone, joined as ever by the only man I can think of in this whole world with the fortitude to join me in this journey, TJ Young. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little distracted because my cat has decided to eat my cactus and eat the flowers off of it. So now he's eating the flowers and batting them around. I'm trying to shoo him away at the same time. I'm still under the heat dome. It's still very hot, but we're here. We're doing great, and I'm excited to do this.
Excellent. Well, I'm very glad that you're here. The heat dome is present here in Canada as well, but air conditioning makes life bearable, I guess.
This is the only room in the house that doesn't have AC in it, and I turned off the box fan for this recording, so no, I'm suffering in more ways than one.
Your sacrifice is noted. And this week we're thrilled to welcome another esteemed guest to the fray, writer, educator, podcaster, the only man I know who takes in-season baseball as unreasonably seriously as I do, Jordan Morille. Welcome, Jordan.
It's kind of good to be here.
Kind of good.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Excited to hang out with y'all and go through this wild text.
Oh, we're excited to have you. And then and an added bonus today is that little Jordan is here. Jordan's daughter has joined us on the pod, sitting very quietly and very good right now. But who knows? We may get some interjections, and Joyce would approve, I think, with the interjections, and maybe we'll get some additional sense out of things.
Good.
A few episodes ago, I talked about TJ's long-running and much more popular podcast than this one, Grown Men Watch Kids Stuff. Jordan is TJ's co-host on that podcast, and I've been lucky enough to guest on that show a few times. So today is an auspicious occasion. I mean, there's only one thing to say, really.
What is this? A crossover episode?
We have ourselves a crossover episode, yes.
That.
So I'm looking forward to guesting on GMWKS again in a couple of weeks, where I'll probably play that same clip and promote this nonsense. But we're very happy to have you all here. That's great. So Jordan, I mean, you talk about this crazy text and what it is. Do you have any kind of relationship with James Joyce or Finnegans Wake? Have you read anything or know anything about it?
No, I have not.
Perfect. The
closest that I've come is when TJ showed me some excerpts from the book he has, and it's as if he was showing me pictures of dead animals. I was like, dude, get it away. I don't even know, what this is. So yeah, it's wild. It's just some of the wording and just the way that things are structured on here. It just felt almost as if the book is daring you to try and read it, and that is just from the few excerpts that I've looked at. So but I'm going to tell you, I'm coming here with an open mind. I don't want to bring too much back of the class energy into this podcast, so I'm not going to it's like I'll give it my all. But yeah, so long.
I love the back of the class energy sort of thing, because
I think there is room in this for back of the class energy.
Well, then allow me to expound. I have a dentist appointment this week, and I was dreading this more than that.
This is what we're looking for. This is what's going to bring in the clicks. I mean, aside from the fact that this is a clean rated podcast, bring it. Bring whatever energy you need to bring, because that's, I think. I don't know if you've heard any episodes that we've recorded.
Yes, I have.
Okay, so have you had a chance to sort of hear any of the Joyce side of things?
Yeah. And again,
what's your experience of listening there?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There's some stuff I think when read and with maybe some certain inflections or whatever, like some of it does sound really pleasing. Do you know what I mean? So I've been enjoying consuming the book. Well, I guess as much as you could enjoy this book, consuming it that way. It's just looking at the text. It's like, oh man, So, and I'm also, what I'm dreading most is reading this stuff out loud.
Well, I will let you know that if I am the speed bump word king right now, I'll hit a word and I'm like, my brain knows what these 4 words together are in this portmanteau, but how they sound together, I don't know.
Yeah.
I actually think that all of us having a theater background, one of the things that we look at is just how things sound. And I don't know about you, but I've sat in a reading and I'm like, that's just not how that word is said, and it bugs me. It bugs me to no end. And so knowing that for this use case, we say the word and we just move on and we don't necessarily get a second chance. It's still it's the one thing, Toby, that I'm just like, it's like a mosquito that I just want to hit. You're like, just give me another go. But
yeah, well, that'll be this on the second read. When we finish this first read next year, then we'll just go back and start again.
I have never heard you tell a funnier joke.
No, we'll go on to Ulysses then. So.
That's easier, though.
That is easier. I'm actually quite looking forward to rereading Ulysses, having read Finnegans Wake now. Because when I read Ulysses, it felt hard. And then having looked at this one, I go, oh, this feels very manageable now.
This has sped up my reading. I will say that I was reading applications for a process that I'm helping with. And when I tell you those scripts, I was like, yep, next. Know what this is. Thank you so much. So if anything, this is a practice in like increasing your reading speed and comprehension.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that in there. And so we've spent a lot of time over the last few weeks hearing all sorts of slanders against our good friend Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, or HCE. So this week we finish out what we started with the trial of Festy King. So it seems like a lot of the guys who are around in HCE's orbit, like Pullbeg and Festy and all the rest, are a fairly shameless bunch of dirtbags. It feels like we're getting a real sense of the underbelly of Dublin. What do you think that makes people be okay with that kind of shamelessness?
Ooh,
I don't know. I just look at that and go, but do you see yourself this kind of behavior?
I mean, I'm thinking about just the potential stark rebellion against religious rule and political rule, and this idea of like it's the original YOLO. Like you only live once. What are you going to do? The worst thing that's going to happen is that I die, which I'm going to do anyway, right? There is a sort of, I guess, freedom to that, but it also speaks to a deep societal bending to masculine will, right? Like the men just get to do whatever they want to do, which is what I took away from Mad Men. Whenever I watched it, I was like, these dudes just get to do whatever they want to do. So even from the time that was written, maybe it was a perspective of like, yeah, the men just go off and they drink, they sleep with whoever, and it's just like a thing that is understood that they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it also feels in today's political climate, it's very easy to associate a lot of this creation of fact from fiction, and if whoever says it loudest enough is true, it feels like there's a lot of that energy in here where HCE it isn't allowed to defend himself. But they put all this stuff together, and we're forced to accept the ravings of awful people.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of like what Playboy of the Western World, how they all freaked out. They're like, how dare you say this about Irish people? And they're like, it's actually just turning an eye or a mirror to what was already happening.
Yeah, and maybe this would have had a larger impact if it were a little more penetrable for the general reader. It's interesting, though, because like you say, Jordan, like looking at the text, it looks like it's impossible, and then hearing the text gives you a little bit more of an insight. But generally, all of these words have so much meaning going down so far that you would have to spend a lifetime analyzing every word just to get all of the different kinds of meaning.
Yeah. Can I ask, I'm not that well versed in the works of Joyce,
Mm-hmm.
but like, what was his deal? Like, did he? No, I'm trying to like. Is it like was this intentional? Because I guess the craziest thing that I've read, I guess like the first like crazy reading experience I had was Stephen King's It. And, and he was under the influence of many substances writing that book. And it gets crazy. It never gets hard, challenging to read. Nothing nearly as challenging as this here. But there is like a giant space turtle that comes down and fights a spider clown. You know what I mean? So it gets pretty wild. So I remember that being my first thing. And then obviously, as I got a little bit older, I remember discovering Cormac McCarthy for the first time. That dude don't use quotation. Well, didn't before he passed on, but didn't use quotation marks for dialogue. And I remember that being kind of challenging. But then once you figure that out, you're like, okay, like did Joyce have an angle in writing in this way, or was he just pulling one over on everybody?
I think he was beyond everyone. I think that was the big challenge he had. By the time he finished Ulysses, which was 1923, and that was a big hit, and he'd had a couple of other big hits, Portrait of the Artist's Young Man and Dubliners, and they got progressively more complex. And by the time he got to the end of Ulysses and started working on The Wake, he started to confess to people that he had no more use for the English language, that the English language wasn't enough for him, and he needed to go beyond that and discover more. And so a lot of the coinage is also the way that the English language has evolved, and all language evolves where new words are coined all the time. But what he's doing is he's turbocharging the coinages. So he was really trying something different and really trying to, and he was also blind by the end of this. It took him 16 years to write this book. And by the end, he was just about blind. He was writing it in crayon because his eyes couldn't see the thin point of a pen, and he was doing it he wrote a lot of it on the inside of a suitcase lid. So he was going through a lot of stuff, and he was dealing with mental health issues within his family and deaths in the family. So it was like a real traumatic period, and so I think a lot of that was poured into it. So I don't know if you would classify this as a prank so much as a hugely ambitious thing that maybe we're not caught up to yet to be able to fully interpret. And that's partly why we're doing this, to go, well, is there something here? Because we've talked to other guests who are really into this, who have gone, oh no, there's something here, but you really have to dig for it. And in our current society, we don't have the patience to do that. Right. Say to people, summarize it as a TikTok, then no, then I don't want to know about it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It will make sense in that it doesn't make sense, but it's helping to contextualize.
Yeah,
and it's kind of like Dada, then, right? Like Dada.
Oh, it's absolutely Dada. Yeah. And Joyce spent some time with Tristan Tzara in Zurich in 1916. Cool. So, which is dramatized in Tom Stoppard's Travesties, where Joyce appears. Maybe we should do we should look into. I should pull that out and see what. I mean, obviously that's pre-Wake, but so Dada is very much, and the Futurists also. So a lot of that kind of stuff. But one of the things I'll encourage you to do as you read is to not look for meaning necessarily, but just to allow
I won't. I promise you that.
The meaning is what trips TJ up all the time.
Because I'm like, I know this means. I was like, I start to catch on to the story, and my brain is like, yeah. But this is how I read books. The second that I think I know what's happening, I sit and I ponder, and I'm like, what are all the ways that this could possibly subvert? And
but so TJ is like a man driving down the highway in his truck at 70 miles an hour and sees an accident on the other side, and then keeps looking in the rear view at the back of the accident to see what that was. And I'm like, oh, what was that? What happened? He's still looking at the accident, and he doesn't see that the traffic has stopped in front of him.
Very true. Very true.
Into that. And then, so you can tell when you're still puzzling out a word from 2 sentences ago.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I've been in the passenger seat in his car. He's very much that kind of driver.
Don't do this. I mean, well, this does speak to just how I read books. I will sit there, I'll read a beautiful passage, I'm like, I'm gonna go back 2 paragraphs and read that again. That's just the way I do it.
Run it back.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so today we've got a fairly nondescript segment here at the end of 1-4. It's the end of the Festi King trial, and it ends with a stanza of poetry, which might be sung or recited or anything. Well, I think, TJ, you've got the final stanza, so we'll see what you do with that poetry that's back there. And this chapter has been a little less dense than the prior one, particularly with news of all the goings-on around the Festi King trial and the various assaults. One thing that I think is really interesting when we're looking at this, and the reason I want to bring this up with you here, Jordan, and 3 theatre people in the room, is that I was doing a little bit of reading around what this chapter is doing, and there's some YouTube playlists out there that describe all the different allusions to the music that's in this chapter, and some of them they're difficult to pass. But there's a YouTube playlist that I'm going to list on our show notes, which lists 71 different songs that are referenced on this. And one of the commentators on that material alludes to Wagner's Gesamtkunstwerk as being key to the wake, which I think is really interesting. So for the uninitiated, the Gesamtkunstwerk is the total piece of theatre that Wagner initiated in the 19th century at his opera house in Beirut. So I don't know, TJ, what do you think about that idea of the wake as total theatre?
Yeah, I think it makes sense because this is also the time when people are actively questioning what is theater, what are its possibilities, what can it do, how does it actually show up in society, how can we push it to what its next form is, right? Which is something that people are always asking. But now also understanding his connection to, even tangentially, to Dada, right, in the future. So it's like, yeah, it makes complete sense. And using the book almost like as performance art in that way, it clicks for me, especially when you're talking about how he wrote it. Like the process of writing it then becomes an art piece in itself.
So hopefully the reading of it today, Jordan, is is a performance piece in itself for you.
Yeah, and if just kind of doubling back to this whole, I guess, these theater comparisons, or these sort of touches. I mean, because the theater of cruelty was around the 30s,
sure,
and so it kind of has that same, like, because that was Artaud was all about, like, we shouldn't adhere, like, dialogue shouldn't be as important, like basically looking at all the conventions of theater and undoing them for the most part. And you can I guess apply the same thing.
I think we talked about Jet of Blood early on in this process about the comparison there. So there's a lot of different things. So keeping an eye on that totality when you're reading, and just enjoying the fact that you get to say these kind of crazy words without the burden of needing to interpret them. Right. That's interesting. So as always, we're going to offer our guests the opportunity to tap out at any time. So we're going to take turns reading. So Jordan, if you need to tap out because Joyce has done your head in, or if baby Jordan needs some attention, just give us the timeout signal. We will tap you out, and TJ or I will jump in for you. For today, what we're reading the second half of chapter 1-4, which runs from page 90 to page 103 in this section. This is the Humphreyad 3. The study continues describing yet more outrages, and we will discuss the segment headings at the end of the reading. So, without further ado, Finnegans Wake.
Mirrored reach and oin cuish, but a new complexion was put upon the matter when, to the perplexedly uncondemnatory bench, whereon Punic judgeship strove with penal law, the senior king of all, Pegar Festi, as soon as the outer layer of stuckamuck had been removed at the request of a few live jurors, declared in a loud burst of poesy, though his Brythonic interpreter on his oath, Hoith Pist. See what? Oh, okay. As Farah Bohira Murray Hirosmas, whereas take notice be the relics of the bones of the story, Bocal, that was 8B Cleopatra, the sow, princess of parked porkers, afore God and all their honours and king's commons, that when he would swear to the tyranny of Dundle again, or any other tyranny, if live Thurkels flogged him about, sure that was no steel, and that nevertheless what was deposited from the eye-bold, ear-big, nose-naving gut throat. He did not fire a stone either before or after he was borne down and up to that time. And incidentalizing, that they might talk about McCarthy, or they might walk to Ballstar Tea, or they might join the neighbor party and come on to Potter feud. The sock dolager had the neck to endorse, with a head bowed on him over his outturned nor'easter, by protesting to his lip readers with a just been cleaned barefacedness, a beam of moonlight's hope in the same Trelawney, what he would impart. Please bench to the lewd Joseph and the gentlemen in juries, and the four of masterers who had been all those yarns yearning for that good one about why he left Dublin, that Amrita Beaker coddling doom, as an Irishman was as good as any cantonadal. If he was to perish by the market stake before the dorming of the Maun, he sculled, never asked to see sight or light of this world or the other world, or any either world of Tiernan Og, as true as he was there in the jackbox that minute, or wheeled and wind. No thanks, deuce. The inexhaustible, was Sailhorn taught of Iski Bausch, the Haleth up the Whaleth of the unknown abgod of the fire of the moving way of the hawks, with his heroes in war horror, if ever in all his squared career he up or lav Chauncey hand to take or throw the sign of a mortal stick or stone at man, yo lamb, or Salvation Army, either before or after being baptized down to the most holy in every blessed hour. Here upon the half-kneel castle knockers attempting Kith Guishly to lilt his holy mess, the pause, and make the sign of the Roman God Helic fakes, Zershai Zertz. In his excitement, the Lado had broken extro Castilian, into which the whole audience perseguired and pursued him a la Padrida. Outbroke much yelactors from owners in the heel, in which, under the mollification of Methologan, the test fighter reluctantly, but with ever so ladylike indecorum, joined. Ha ha!
The hilaria hoot of peggers wind up come josted as neatly with the tritone of the wet pinters as were the isca et illy, equals of opposites, evolved by the one same power of nature or spirit, iste, as the sole condition and means of the him under her manifestation, and polarized for reunion by the symphysis of his antipathis. Distinctly different were the duas destinies. Whereas the maidens of the bar, a perilous Trentine, a lunaray's score, when the Enethress murmured, shoned and posed, fluttered and flattered around the willing pressed, nominating him for the Sweeney Prize, complimenting him and captivating youth, and on his having all his senses about him, stinked uh, thyasis through his curls. O fiend! O dior! And bringing busses to his cheeks, their masculine Ayrshire rose, his knees clear, and legendo round his nice new neck for him, and pizzicalinalling his woolly wags with their dindy dandy sugar, de candy, McCree, me post-teen floans couriered to believe them of all his untiring young dames and send treats in their times. Wyman, but it was not unobserved of these presents, their worships, how of one among all her deputized to defame him by the Lunar Sisters Celibacy Club, a love-looking leap girl, all a lonely Gentia Gemma of the make-giddy culling reeks, he, wan and pale, in his unmixed admiration, seen blindly, mutely, tastelessly, tactlessly, enamourate with her upon him, in shining minglement. a shame, and his hissue shifted into the shimmering of hers, youth's beauties, he's her chap, and she'll tell Mimas when she gaze whom, till the wild wish of her shisha melted most musically mid the dark deep of his shaysham. And whereas distracted, for was not just this an effect which was just ceased that the effect of that which it had caused to occur? The four judicers laid their wigs together, Untus, Muncius, Puntius, and Pilex, but could do no worse than promulgate their standing verdict of Nolens Brahmins where one after king, having murdered all the English he knew, picked out of his pockets, and left the tribunal scot-free, trailing his Tommy Lami's tunic in a hurry, there and under proudly showing off the blink patch to his Britgits to prove himself. Ain't please use a rail genteel to the Switz bodyguards cruel but court-like. Commodore Valley O'Hare and 3 Jenny Rosie, a firewater louver returned with such a vine-smelling 40-tutor ages raw down hams, tan your hide, as you would the latent stomach even of a two-mass equinus. We were prepared for the chap's clap cap, the accent, but took us as by surprise, and now we're guessing it like gush gash from a burner, so that all the 2 from 30 advocatesses within echo, pulling up their briefs and a crig cry, shun the punman, safely and soundly sorcered the Fentimine parish pauser. How dare he? Impromptu right away Hames much of his thanks gratis sagaium to all the wrong donatrice bis drink battles dingy dwelling where for like your true venison esu he was dove timid as the deers at bottom he shat in zoo with the muddy gold mine, he was done. The chastity's bellies conclaiming you and your gift, your you and your gift of gaff and your garbage about our favor. A gain gradado, Han, Verg, now, Pooter, Scam, Shams, Shames.
And so it all ended. Arthur, Karma, Dharma, Moxa asked Kavya for the K. And so everybody heard their plaint and all listened to their applause. The letter, the litter, and the sooth of the bitter, of eyebrow penciled by lip stipple penned, borrowing a word and begging the question, stealing tinder and slipping like soap. From dark racer lane, a sigh and a weep. From Lesbia Louche, the beam in her eye. From lone Coogan Barry, his arrow of song. From Sean Kelly's anagram, a blush at the name. From I am the Sullivan, that trumpeting tramp. From suffering Dufferin, the sit of her style. From Kathleen May Vernon, her meb fair efforts. From Phil the Pot Curran, his Scotch love Macretha. From him op to Phil Aldolphus, the weary O, the leery O. From Samuel Lever, or Damuel Lover, that jolly old Molly bit, or that bored saunter by. From Tim Finnegans, weak tribes, loss of strength to his so will. From the wedding on the green, our girlies, the gretness of Joy Boys, from Pat Mullen, Tom Mallon, Dan Meldon, Don Malden, a slick stick picnic made in moat by Muldoons. The solid man saved by his sillied woman, cracker-jolking away like a hearse on fire. The elm that whimpers at the top told the stone that moans when stricken. Wind broke it, wave bore it, reed wote of it, Sice ran with it, hand tore it, and wild went war. Hen treeved it and plight pledged peace. It was folded with cunning, sealed with crime, uptied by a harlot, undone by a child. It was life, but was it fair? It was free, but was it art? The old hunks on the hill read it to perlection. It made ma merry and Sissy so shy, and rubbed some shine off Shem and put some shame into Sean. Yet Una and Eta spill famine with drought, and Agrippa, the pro-pastard, spells tribulations in his threne. Ah, fruct, Trimid Danaides, Ina Milo Melamon. Frey is Frau and Sui is two. Sui is two when Swu is free. Anna Mala, woe is we. A pair of sicker panties with amigadeline eyes, one old obster lumpky pumpkin, and three medlars on their slies. And that was how, Fram Sin from sun, a city arose, fin fin, fun fun, a sitting arrows. Now tell me then.
What was it? Ah! Oh! So there you are now. There they were, when all was over again, the four with them, setting around upin their judges' chambers and the muniment room of their Marshalsea, under the suspices of Lally, around their old traditional tables of the law, like Sornany Solons, to talk it over, were all the same again. Well and truly dry, suffering law the dring, courting to King's Evelyns. So help her goat and kiss the boke, festives and hyajinks and Gentiam and her B.T. Rossi, Betty Doty, and not to forget now, Aduna O'Darnell. The four of them, and thank court now there were no more of them, so pass the push for port's sake, be it soon. Ah-ho! And do you remember Singabob, the bad father, the same, the great, how do you call him, and his old nickname, Dirty Daddy Pantaloons? in his monopoliums, the War of the Two Roses, with Michael's victory, the Sheeman's priester, before he caught his paper dispensation from the poke, old Minnis and Minster York. Do I mind? I mind the gush off the mon like Ballybock manure works on a trade wind's day. And the O'Moily Gracies and the O'Brieny Rossies chaffing him blush face and playing him pranks. How do you do, Toto? North, mister? Get into my way. Ah, dearum for sailoshi, gone over the bays, when Ginabody met a body. Yarrow, why would he heed that old gasometer with his whooping coppin and his Dian Boosie cough, and all the birds of the south side after her, Minxie Cunningham, their dear divorcee darling, Jimmy's and Johnny's to be her Joe? Hold hard. There's three other corners to our isle's cork float. Sure, 'tis well I can telesmell him H2CE3. That would take a township's breath away. Gob and I knows him too well, as I do myself, heaving up the K-wall by the 32 to 11 with his lime-looking horse bags full of sesame seed, the white-side Kaffir in his Samon's effluvium, and his scent-painted voice puffing out his thundering big brown cabbage. Pa, thought I'm glad a gull for his poostine fionn. Go Boro, says he, lanky sheed. Go bugga, ye, says I. Oh, breezes. I sniffed that lad long before anyone. It was when I was in my farfather out at the west, and she and myself, the red-headed girl, first nighting down Sycamore Lane. Fine field play we had of it mid the kissabets frisking in the cool kirkle dusk of the lushiness. My perfume of the pampas, says she, meaning me, putting out her nether lights, and I'd sooner one precious sip at your pure Mountain Dew than enrich my acquaintance with that big brewer's belch. And so they went on, the four-bottle men, the analysts, the Unguam and Nuguam and Lunguam again, their Anschluss about her, who's before, and his whereafters, and how she was lost away in the fern, and how he was founded deep on deep in an ear, and the rustlings and the twitterings and the graspings and the snappings and the sighings and the paintings and the cuckwings and the hist, the spring partings and the hast, the by scuttlings, and all the scandalmonkers and the pure Craigs that used to be up that time living and lying and ratting and riding round Nunsbelly Square, and all the buds in the bush, and the laughing jackass, Hurrick, 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 The rose is white in the Durick, and Sunfella's nose has got rhinoceros from haunting the roses in the park. So all rogues lean to rhyme and contra-drinking themselves about Lily Trilly, Lawporn, Hilly, and Mrs. Niall of the Nine Corsages, and the old Marquis, their best or far. And hurrah, sure, there was never a Marquis at all among the Manleys, and the dear Sir Armory, queer Sir Roomery, and the old house by the Chirpalizade, and all the goings on so very wrong long before when they were going on retreat, and the old gameldags and four of them in Milton's Park under lovely Father Whisperer, and making her love with his stuff and the languish of flowers, and feeling to find was she mushy, and wasn't that very both of them the sauces sisters, Adraharine o mockery, and Peep meeting waters most improper, Pipette ball around the garden, trickle tris, please Myman, may I go flirting, farmers gone with a groom, and how they used her, mused her, licked her, and cuddled. I defer with ye. Are you sure of yourself now? You're a liar, excuse me, I will not, and you're an other. And lully holding their breach and of peace for them, pool all lolly, to give and to take, and to forego the pasht, and all will be forgotten. Ah ho! It was too bad to be falling out about her kindness pet in the shape of Orang's time. Well, all right, Lily, and shake hand, and shank some more. For Craig's sake, be it suck.
Well, even should not the framing up of such figments in the evidential order bring the true truth to light as fortuitously as a dim seer's setting of a star chart might, heaven helping it, uncover the nakedness of an unknown body in the fields of blue, or as foreherringly as the sib speeches of all mankind have foiled, earth seized them from the root of some funner's staughter, all the soundest sense to be found immense our special mentalist now holds, securus ictite orbis terrenum, that by such playing possum our hagius curious ancestor bestly saved his brush with his posterity, you, charming, Coper, Copercinerus, us, heirs of his Tyseal, gun dogs of all breeds, were bagling with renounced Ur- urban Doribic bugles, hot to run him given law on the scent breast thigh keen of the worry. View from his holt outratted across the jewel tides genial coarse lands of Humphreys Chase from Mullenhob to Peacockstown, then bearing right upon Tankardstown, the outlier, a white Nolan with Mr. Lowenwistill Fitz Urus beset beaters had first misbadgered for Brune of some swart, led buyers to run, then through Raystown and Horslockstown and louping the loop and Tankardstown again. Ere canny hair for doubling through Sheverstown, they raced him through Longingstown and Nutstown to wind him up the bullies. But from the good turn when he last was lost, check upon ye hill of rut and full winter coat with ticker pads, pointing for his rooming house, his old Nordst, to the roly top royal to the roll top royal, Hessens a deaf futures, Volponism, hid him close to covet, miraculously raven fed and buoyed up in rumor, ridicule, onosum, and abumsum. Upon may all brew ham have his mead, the cream clotted sherryness of cinnamon syllabub, Meckle raved, nickel saved, hence hounds hide home. preservative preservance in the re-education of his intestines was the rebuttal by Wilk he sought of get the big bulge of the whole bunch of spack soakers dieting against glues and gravies in the sometime pre-street pro-town. Vainly violence, virulence, and vituperation sought well nigh utterly to attack and abridge, to derail and depontify, to enrate and enroad, to ogode, to unhume the great shipping mogul and underlined overlord.
But the spoil of hesitance, the spell of hesitancy. His a take is it ash, tittery, tor, tattery tail, has a tense, humpet on a dimply, hey, 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 a wincy wecky. Assemblymen murmured, Reynard is slow. One feared for his days. Did there yawn? 'Twas his stomach. Eruct, deliver. A gush from his visuals. Pung, deliver him, Orlode. He had laid violent hands on himself. It was brought in Fugger's newsletter, lain down, all in fagged out, with equally melancholy death. For the tridium of Saturnalia, his goat servant had paraded his willing sons in the forum, while the Jenny infanted the last to be greeted raucously, the yard stated, with hooks and fuse, and measured with missiles too, from 100 of manhood, and a whimmering of weebs. Big went the bang, then wild wide was quiet. A report. Silence. Last farmer put it under ether. The nose or the lol had driven him blem, blem, stun blem. Sparks flew. He had fled again. Open Shunshema. This country of exiled, sloughed off sidled home via the subterranean shored with bedboards, stowed away and anchored in a Dutch-bottom tunk the Asa Hod SS Finlandia, and was even now occupying under an Islamic Newhame in his 7th generation, a physical body Cornelius McGrath's, bad old character, Commonoring Canbung, in Asia Minor, where as Turk of the theatre, first house all flatty, the king, 11 sharps, he had BPS'd the boot dancers from the opulence of his omnibox, while as Arab at the street cour he bepestered the bumbashores for the alms of a para's pence. Wires humped. Peacefully general astonishment, assisted by regretitude, had put a term till his existence. He saw the family Sagath, resigned, put off his remainders, was recalled and scrap-heaped by the maker. Chirpings crossed, an infamous private ailment, vulgo varia venereal, had claimed end-right, closed his vicious circle, snap, jams jarred. He had walked towards the middle of an ornamental lily pond when inebriated up to the point when braced shirts meet knickerbockers, at wangfish daring their buoyant waters, when Rodman's first aiding hands had rescued Un from a very possibly severable feet of demi-fresh water. Mush spread. On Umbrella Street, where he did drinks from a pumps, a kind workman, Mr. Whitlock, gave him a piece of wood. What words of power were made fast between them? Eke-names and ork-gnomes, economia, icknumia. That did Hansard tell us, would gar Gans Dub's ears wag in every pub of all the sitter. Batty believes a baton, while Hogan hears a hod, yet here prefers a punsel shapner, and cup and bull go cup and ball. And the Cassidy, Craddock, Rome, and ream around air a weege ne'er a wage, is still immer and immore a wagering over it, a cradle with a care in it, or a casket with a kick behind. Totties, testies, quoties, questies. The war is in words, and the wood is in the world. Maply me, willowy we, hickory he, and you yourselves. How for him chirrupeth ever rich bird. From gold dawn glory to glow-worm gleam, we were low quacks, did we not tacit turn? Elsewhere, here, no concern of the Guinnesses, but only of the ruining of the rain has heard. Estout, poor Porterall, cracklings cricked, a human pest, cycling, pissed, and recycling, passed about the sledgy streets. Here he was, pussed again. Morse nuisance noised. He was loose at large and, oh baby, might be anywhere with when a disguised ex-nun of huge stand build and masculine manners in her fairly fat 40s, Carpulenta Gigasta, attract attention to by arbitrary conduct with a homnibus. Ariel's busted Ariel's buzz to coastal listeners of an Ortax Brawl collector's budget, fully big, sporran, tie, tough, tapered, and bloody anti-chill cloak. Its tailors, Baron Father's, tab reading VPH, found nigh Skull Brothers whole, and divers shivered to think what kind of beast, wolves, croppices, or fourpenny friars had devoured him. CW cast wide. Vistings lick, droneth zvertgleam, Vauchter locked. On his pink sir's postern, the boys had at it at Wit Weekend, had been nailed an inked-up name entitled, inscribed in the national cursives, accelerated, regressive, filiform, turreted, and enveloped in pigotry. Move up, Mumpty, Mike room for Rumpty, by order, Nicokellis plug. And this go, no Pentecostal jest about it, how gregarious his race soever, or skilful, learned, wise, cunning, knowledgeable, clear, profound, his saying fortitudo fraught, or prudentia proven, were he chief, count, general, field marshal, prince, or king, or Miles the Slasher in his person, with Molia Mordha mansion in the Breffnian Empire, and a place of inauguration on the hill of Tullymongan, there had been a real murder of the Rahilak Royal Raxacraxian variety, the McMahon chaps. It was that had done him in. On the Fid de Verde, the rampart combatants had left him lying with his dexter hand coup resurrected in a pureed, poor me, bloody proper. Indeed, not a few thick and thin well-wishers, mostly of the Clontarf-minded class, Colonel John Bowie O'Rourke, Vexemplus, even ventured so far as to loan or beg copies of D. Blainsey's trilingual tri-weekly Scatterbrains Afternoon Posht, so as to make certain sure one time and be satisfied of their quasi-contrabussed deletarians having become genuinely quite beatly dead, whether by land, whether by water. Trans-ocean acclaimed him. The latter. Shall their hope then be silent, or MacFarlane lack of lamentation? He lay under leagues of it in deep Bartholomews deep.
Achtung, Pozor, Attenshun, Viceroy besites smucky young pigiscoolies, Tri pays dinnernis, Eventier med, Lochlaner, Fat hack I Fioin is gehaven. Banalana bangs ballyhooly out of her buttery of a bull of vogue. But their bright little contemporaries notwithstanding, on the mooring morn of the suicidal murder of the unrescued expatriate, as like as a snake comes sliduant down that oak tree onto the Duke of Beavers. You may have seen some liquid amber exude exotic from a balsam poplar at Partine a Locks limestone, rode and cried, Abby's Magnifica, not noble fur, a 9:15 imploring his recipiency, saw the infallible spike of smokes jut stiff, punctual from the seventh gable of our Quintus Centimachus's poor Phyroid butter tower, and then thirsty PM with oaths upon his lastingness. En caecus hatrospicis annos longos patimur. The lamps of maintenance, beacons for a field, inner half, the zuggurat, all brevet named the wasting wyvern, the tawny of his mane, the swing low swaying blue paw, the outstanding man, the low-like lady, being litten for the long, O land, how long? Life's night, with suffusion of fine glass, transom, and lead-light panes. Wherefore let it hardly by any being thinking he said either or thought that the prisoner of that sacred edifice, were he an Ivor the Boneless or an Olaf the Hide, was at his best a one-stone parable, a rude breathing on the void of to be, a venter hearing his own walk speech in backwards, or more strictly, but Tristerned initials, the clue key to a world room beyond the room whorled for scarce one, or pathetically few, of his dode canal salmon livers, cared seriously or for long to doubt with Kurt Eld van Dijk, the gravitational pull perceived by certain fixed residents, and the capture of uncertain comets, chance drifting through our system, suggesting an authentic itatum of his aliquidinities, the canonicity of his existence as a tesseract. Be still, O quick, speak him dumb, hush ye fronds of Ulma.
Dispersal women wondered, was she fast? Do tell us all about, as we want to hear all about. So tell us all about her, and why or whether she looked all lotty like ussies, and whether he had his wind up like them's is shut. Notes, inquiries, titbits and answers, the laugh and the shout, the ards and the downs. Now listing to one and neither, and list them down, and smoothen out your leaves of rose. The war is o'er. Win-wim, was in unity more, or Estelle Swifty, or Vanera Fay, or Quantra Quandum, Thomas Mark for your uncle, Pig eyes, hold up med ye leg. Who, but who, for second time of asking, was them the scourge of the parts about folk rich Luca Lizard? It was wont to be asked, as is in ages behind of the Homos Cepite Erectus, that price Peabody's money, or, to put it bluntly, wherence is the Harrington's white cravat, as an epoch's more Canozoic, who struck Buckley through nowadays, as then times every school filly of 70 moons or more, who know her entomologies, and every Colin ball of roof, and every red flannel waving, war wife and widow piece upon Dublin wall, for ever knows, as yayas to yayas, how it was Buckley self. We need no blotting paper to tell it neither, who struck and the Russian generals, da, instead of Buckley, who was cattily struck by him when be herselves. What full-priced pull a poison in the spy of 3 castles, of which Hatefield Smiley cellar? And that such a vitriol of venom, the Queen's head affrancescent, a quite stinking plaster zeal could cover, pre-postered or post-paid. The lounge lizards of the pump room had their 9 days' jeer, their pratichette cats at their plastic pails too, and Holland Polendome beside. Spatspisms, the Zane Zoins, when, still believing in her own glass, when Izars were twinklings, that the upper reaches of the mouthless face of her impermanent waves were the better half of her, one nearer him, dearer than all, first woman creature of his early morn, bound woman of the man of the house, and murmur of all the mavericks. She would have given his eye for her bed, and a tooth for a child, to 1 and 110 and 100 again. Oh me, and oh ye, cadet and prim, the hungray and anagreen, and if she is older now than her teeth, she has hair that is younger than thine, my dear. She was shunted after him his fall, and waking him, widowed, sparring, and gave him keen, and made him able, and held adaziles to each arc of his nose. She who will not rast her from her running to seek him till, when with the help of the Oakenmick, some such time that she shall have been after hiding the crumpins of his enormousness, and the are you looking for pearl far sea, Uri, Ura, stood forth, burns burn the Gorgorny old Dan world in Gorga's name, for Gargar's sake, dragging the countryside in her train, finicking her and funnicking there with her Lusiqueen bros and her old Calder buzzle and her little bolero boa and all and 2 times 20 curly cornies of her headdress, specks of her iris, and spuds of her horliss, and a crucifix riding her Parisines cockneys, avant her straddled from Equerry Egon, when tink tink in the church close clinked Stepa Plajazima Sunday, sola with pawns, prelates, and pukas piloting in her piece bag, for handyman the chomp esquero bistbass to crush the slander's head. Weary weenie right, plead the more. Notre Dame de la Villa, mercy to thy ball hearts and heat. Organ Watts dikes beyond her bata work of the druggist. Bulk him no bulkies, and let him rest, thou wayfare, and take no grave spoil from him, neither mar his mound. The bane of Tut is on it. Where? But there's a little lady waiting for her name, and there's a little lady waiting, and her name is A.L.P., and you'll agree, she must be she, for her Holden here heaps hanging down her back. He spent his strength among harum scarums, Poppy Narasi, Gaialia, Gloria, Marinic, Annaline, Prame, and ilk of those dames had her rainbow humorous yet, for will go her whims, but he coined a cure. Tiff tiff today, kissy kiss tonight, an age-long pine tormarena, then, who put crippled with children, would speak up for dropping with sweat. Sold him her lease for 999 tresses undressed, so die dainty. Goo, the Groot grudgeon, gulped it all. Who was the C.O.D.? Bum. At Island Bridge she met her tide. A tom, at a bomb, bomb. The Finn had a flux and his Ebba a ride. At a bomb, bomb. We're all up to the years and hues and cribbies. That's what she's done for ye. Whoa. Nomad may roam with Nachbach, but let Nam laugh at Jordan. For we have taken our sheet upon her stones, where we have hanged our hearts in her trees, and we list as she bibs us by the waters of Babylon.
Woo-wee. Did that.
We did that. That was the end of chapter 1-4 from Finnegans Wake. Jordan, how are you feeling?
I feel dumb. I feel really... You read so eloquently.
Toby's made for this. I'm just going to say Toby was built for this.
I feel like we're in like a small class and Toby's teaching us how to read.
I just have a little bit more experience at this thing. I'm just letting it carry me.
There were it's a demanding text. There were moments where I'm like, okay, I got this. It's like when you first learn how to ride a bike, you know? And you're like, all right, I'm pedaling, I'm moving, and then you inevitably mess up. You get tripped up on a word, and then it's back to square one.
You learn how to ride a bike, and then they're like, do this 30-foot jump. Oh wait, never mind. Just ride the bike like normal. JK, hop on a surfboard with it.
It's like driving, like learning to drive in a parking lot and then going out on the highway.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different thing. But remember, as Joyce tells us, nomad may roam with Nabuk, but let no man laugh at Jordan. So we're not laughing at you, Jordan. There's no laughing at you. Joyce is telling us, let no man laugh at Jordan. We very much... No, it was great. and I really felt like you picked up momentum. Like it
Yeah,
felt like you really got some of the rhythm.
yeah, it was giving me. I mean, when my passage started with those two, Mirdreach and Oinkush, I was like, come on, man! Like y'all couldn't have me start like the next sentence, but a new complexion. Like y'all had to give me that. But no, yeah. So the first one was a little rocky. I will say, there are moments in here where I'm like, okay, that's a bar. You know, there are
Yeah.
some cool passages in here, but then it's then we come across a word or some kind of sentence structure that is just foreign to me, and it's a weird text.
It is.
I know that's a vast understatement, but it's really
Well,
And
challenging.
it's interesting just looking it up now. The Midrik and Oinkush is Gaelic for whore of Ireland.
they're not letting
That's
this man get
awesome.
off with nothing. Also, like there was a whole lot of one. I also want to thank Fox Kids. When I was a child, there was this cartoon that came on, or there's this live action show that came on called Knights of Tir na Nog. So when Tir na Nog popped up, I was like, I know what that is. It's the land of eternal youth. Which I was like, that's weird that I know that from that. But that whole like, oh yeah, he was fascinated with him under her, but he actually liked her on him, and I was like, okay, I see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we threw you in at the deep end there, Jordan. There was some stuff in there that on the bottom of page 91, there was a sentence that went on for nearly half a page. With no punctuation, and I could hear you just being like, is this still going? This is still going. Oh, this is still going.
And this is clearly, well, I say clearly as if I'm some kind of expert, but I'm willing to bet that this is a text that demands like reading and rereading to fully grasp it. But the mood that he kind of presents in some of these, even if I don't quite understand the words, I kind of get like the moment. What is it? Bottom of page 95. Fine field play we had of it mid the kissabets frisking in the cool kirkle dusk of the lushiness. My perfume of the pampas, says she, meaning me, putting out her nether lights, and I'd sooner one precious sip at your pure Mountain Dew than enrich my acquaintance with that big brewer's belch. I understand like 5 words of that entire thing, but it's like they're kind of having a little, they're having a little rendezvous, right? There's like a little, is that
Yeah.
So it's
And like you say, he just drops these things in. He drops these pearls into that we've talked often about how sometimes he'll say something and you think, man, someone's career would be made with that one phrase, and that would be all that they're dying out on. And this guy's just dumping it in at page 95.
Yeah.
I mean, like the phrase on 94, uptied by a harlot, undone by a child. I'm just like, that is so so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
And
Also, Dirty Daddy Pantaloons.
Dirty Daddy Pantaloons was, I think, my
Well,
favorite.
I figured that when we put the poem at the end of that chapter to a beat, we can release it under the name of Dirty Daddy Pantaloons.
Diamond Dallas Page really missed an opportunity there with
He
his
did.
initial.
Dirty Daddy Pantaloons.
Yeah, we'll find that later. That was what his reference was.
But I also felt like if I ever just get mad at Jordan, I'm just gonna be like, "Shut up, you lanky shide!" Like, what does it mean? I don't know, but it sounds like an insult.
Yeah.
Bits and pieces like it, like the on page 94 towards the top. It was life, but was it fair? It was free, but was it art? Feels like
so
it
good.
That needs to be a mural on the side of a building somewhere.
I hadn't popcorn read like this in a minute. And this was taking me back to like when we would popcorn read like Shakespeare or just like The Great Gatsby, which are all by comparison pretty digestible reads, but at that time, at that age, you're sitting there like sweating and you're like, okay, my section's coming up here. You're kind of trying to like go over your section so you don't say any words wrong. And this book is like, good luck, dude. Like, you're gonna trip up. And then like I would notice looking over at my section, or even like looking down at the baby or whatever, and then I look back and it's like, where, hearing TJ, Toby, where are they? Like, y'all were just right there, and just because it's so dense and so I'm playing this game right now called Kingdom Come Deliverance, and you start out as a peasant who doesn't know how to read, and so a lot of the things that you read, they look a lot like this,
Right.
and it's just it. And going back to this idea of Wagner and that total work, I do think, because a part of that was like audience interaction, involvement, or whatever. I do think this belongs in that category because
I don't think it's meant to be read silently to yourself.
no, and kind of this shared experience of the audience being like, what, what say?
Toby, I think I found my tattoo though. And
Oh yeah,
it was life, but was it fair? It was free, but was it art? That's the tattoo.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Oh, you're gonna get a Joyce tattoo?
We said that when we finish this, we're going to get a Joyce tattoo.
We're going to get a Finnegans Wake tattoo.
Yeah, something
but
like I think that's it. It was life, but was it fair? It was free, but was it art? That's so. That is.
You should get that on your lower back.
No. But also the way he described this nun, 99. Might be anywhere when a distinguished ex-nun, a huge stand build and masculine manners in her fairly fat 40s.
Carpulenta Geigaster. Oh, amazing. Yeah, that I don't often trip and stop and go back, but when I realized it was a disguised ex-nun, that was, you had to go back and really a huge stand build, masculine manners.
He said she big.
And then, because we've been reading, it was quite cathartic to hit 100 pages and go, oh, we're 100, we're nearly
a sixth of the way, nearly a sixth of the way through the book.
Yeah, so we're getting there. But to hit 100 pages, and then having spent 100 pages hearing all about HCE and all the things that are wrong with him, and how no one has any hope for him, it was this glorious breath of fresh air to finally meet ALP.
Yeah.
And ALP being HCE's wife, and suddenly you go, oh, the one person who's going to defend him is finally here. But where? But there's a little lady waiting, and her name is ALP. And it felt. I don't know. It's like the scene when Han Solo comes back. I don't know. you get that. There's the hope. There's the hope that it might work out. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on, and you in terms of the storytelling, you miss it. The Oxford World's Classic summarizes all those sections here, and so I'll just read out what's happening in each of those sections. So from 90:34 to 92.5, Festi is declaring his innocence. 92.6 to 93.21, women in court admire the witness while shunning Festi. 93:22 to 94:22, the trial ends with King let off. The letter is called for. 94:23 to 96:24, the judges drink and reminisce. 96:25 to 97:28, HCE in hiding is hunted for, and all those images of dogs and hunting parties going out. It's very vivid. 97:29 to 100.4, men gossip. They hope he's dead. 100.5 to 136, but no, smoke rises. He lives. And then finally 101 to 103, women gossip. ALP will defend him. ALP is introduced. So, do we get all that from the room?
I got bits and pieces.
Yeah,
I got bits and pieces.
I didn't even get bits. I didn't get no bits and nothing.
I mean, it's interesting, and I think this is one of the really curious things about bringing guests in is that TJ and I have been living in this for the last month, and so we're kind of getting the vocabulary. We're building so we're starting to see patterns. So we're starting to see things that make sense to us, and then bringing you in cold and saying, "Yo, here's read this thing with the baby at your knee, and good luck, bro."
Yeah.
There's no shame in not picking it up, because there's as we said, people spend their whole lives trying to figure all of this sort of stuff out.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I should thank you, because I never would have read this otherwise. So being able to say that I've read, a few sections of Finnegans Wake, but I would never read this unless I was like forced to or invited on for something like this. So
I was going to have, since you teach writing, like I teach writing, what I've been taken away from this is that, like, really and truly, you can play with language anyway as long as you know what it means, and as long as you can imbue meaning in it. Is there anything from this section that you've taken away that you're like, I can impart this on my students, or this has brought in your idea of the use of language, or anything like that?
No. I could sit here and wax poetic and pull an answer out, but yeah, no.
But I guess,
That's it.
like Toby said, we've been sitting with it for a month. So
Yeah.
at this point, I'm like,
That's okay. We have plenty of people who are going to try to be respectful to this thing. It's no problem whatsoever to say, no, this doesn't work for me. But it is interesting though to sort of to realize that, I mean, because we get so caught up in meaning. And when a young playwright will write a script, then you'll come and read it. We're reading it for meaning. We're reading it to trying to crack the code behind it. And when something is obtuse, then the instinct is to say, I don't know what's going on here. And then a young playwright will go, okay, I guess I'll fix it. Whereas here he's saying, there's nothing to fix. This is what I want it as. And we've had comments because we've started the free Patreon page, and we've got some listeners who are on there, and it's been quite interesting hearing their perspectives as they're listening to it. We've had some. Susan has talked about listening along to the podcast while floating in her jacuzzi, so letting the words wash over her, which I love. It's other people talking about listening while they're cooking, and others are slamming episodes back to back, which I think is very brave. But one listener, Scott, he suggested that listening at first suggested the Vogon poetry from Hitchhiker's Guide, which is the worst poetry in the world that's read to people as torture. And so that he said that he started that, but then he sort of talked about how it becomes very meditative to listen to, and allied it to the Sigur Rós album, the Bracket album, which was entirely written in an invented language called Hopelandic. And I think it's quite, and listening to that is very ethereal and interesting.
I love that music so much. Yeah.
And so that's, but where the language is invented, and it made me think of your play Wash, TJ, when you had created the language, right?
Yeah, I looked up. It was an interception of three different things: two West African languages, and an interpretation of contemporary West African Sign Language, right? And it really became about, what do I think would be used, what do I think won't be used. But that play is also all about the misinterpretation of language, right? What is one thing to one person is another thing to another character. So like the idea of water is one thing, but the idea of water is the whole universe to another character. And yeah, I think it really does become about, like, what is there in translation, but also what is there in delivery. Like Jordan said, if with certain inflection and time spent with the text, if you're able to put that on that, you can make it mean almost anything, right? But yeah, it was really about just combining things and seeing, what actually do I think still fits? Where is there room for misinterpretation? Where is there room for modulating those languages?
Yeah, really interesting to think about how Joyce is playing with the language and really challenging us.
Yeah, I saw some German in there. I saw lots of German in there. I was like, oh, my 3.5 years of German are actually paying off.
So lots of really fun stuff that came out of that. And the most fun, of course, was watching Jordan struggle with the text. That was kind of a bit of a joy. But it was also, the secondary joy is watching you kind of find it, catch a stride and figure out how to get in there.
Yeah, look, you're not going to, I like I said, seeing the excerpts at first and be like, man, what is this? You're not going to, I'm not going to turn that corner after like one read through, but I definitely I think with more time spent with it and listening to it, especially listening to you read it, Toby, just because you're just the way you were kind of flying through all that kind of stuff. I think that's how best I could approach this kind of text if someone's
right. And then you think about the first time you saw Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And like if you were given Shakespeare as a 7-year-old, you'd go, I don't, this is nonsense. I remember very clearly being in high school and the older kids in high school being really good at Shakespeare and me looking and going, how do you understand it? It's impossible. Right. And they're like, eventually something will click in your brain. It'll be easy. You'll read it just like anything else. And I remember thinking, that's impossible. And of course, that's what happened is you're exposed to it enough suddenly it's easy.
I also
I don't
think
know
about whenever I see a Shakespeare performance, like the first 3 minutes, I'm like, how are they delivering the text? And you have to decipher like how are they delivering text, and now I can actually be in the performance.
And that's the big difference, right? I mean, comparing this to a dramatic work, you'd be like, I don't know what that person's saying, but I know they're mad because the way they're saying it. Versus something like this, like I don't, there is, reading it by yourself. I think you said this earlier, Toby. This really isn't meant to be read by yourself, because you lose that,
I love it. So that's all the time we have for Wake this week. For more Dada-esque gesamtkunstwerk, join us next week where we'll keep finding meaning among the fragments, along with our very special guest, our first purist. Oh, we're looking forward to it. We're not sure what we have in for us, but yes, our first purist will be joining us next week. But I've been Toby Malone, joined by TJ Young, and I want to thank Jordan Morille for joining us this week. Thank you so much.
Of course, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and everyone listen to GMWKS. I'm going to link to that in the show notes, so you can go listen to these guys talk all about kids' movies.
Vastly different from this.
A little bit.
I like that pause. Listen to these guys talk about the kids' movies,
Well worth listening to.
I really appreciate you having me. This despite my demeanor, this was a great time. So
yeah. Oh, it's always fun to hang out. All right, see you next week, you masochists. This has been Wake, a cold reading of James Joyce's Finnegans Wake, just to hear it out loud. If you've made it this far, thank you for your dedication. Join us next week for another segment of Finnegans Wake and a chat about what we've found. Wake is a Moon Street Media podcast, engineered by TJ Young and Toby Malone. Our theme song is The Ballad of Perso Riley, arranged and performed by Meg Logue after James Joyce. Wake is recorded in Canada, where Finnegans Wake is in the public domain. For community and bonus content, join us at our free Patreon at patreon.com/wakepod. If you have questions about Finnegans Wake, don't ask us. We're just as confused as you are. See you next week.